Now, I never thought that it could be so hard to be touched by the light, then left in the dark. That cool compassion my heart once met with, swept away with the tide of a life left breathless on a cold day. Now the undertow could drag me on down, but the current of heaven's gonna bring me around to the spark of a man.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Trauma Bombs. This past week has been stressful. It's been stressful because the effects of another trauma bomb has impacted my life and my son's life. My son, 15 years old, adopted, far more trauma in his life than I've had in mine. He ran away. Was gone for 3 days. Whenever an event like that happens in our lives, when we get through it, there's a chance for growth. Hopefully, that's what has occurred for him. I've written a blog article about it, and the link will be in the comments. The trauma that young children experience, they don't have the mechanisms to really process them. He's been in my home since he was 5 years old for the past 10 years. He's had all of the therapies available, all the different modalities, but he's never been to a place where he's prepared or willing to accept looking at that trauma, that fear, that resistance has always been there, and he's fought it valiantly, not looking at the past. But part of the problem with children that have had early trauma is they don't remember a lot about it. They don't remember the details. In his particular situation, his older sister was the keeper of the memories. He didn't keep the memories, but he felt them. They impacted his brain chemistry, impacted the way he thought about the world, the way he thought about himself. And he's had used various coping mechanisms, all pretty much maladaptive and damaging to himself. There was nothing that happened that precipitated him running away. Yeah, he wasn't doing real fantastic in school. There were those pressures. There were just everyday life stresses and things that he didn't know how to cope with. So, on an impulse, he decided he was going to run away. He was going to walk away from it all. Well, I think once he got out there, he started feeling remorse pretty quickly. But it took him 3 days to put himself in a situation where he was found and returned home. Before, he wasn't willing to accept therapy. Now he says he might. And many of us, we get in situations that we don't really understand what's happening because we have not examined in depth our lifeline, our trauma line. We've not documented it. I was reading today a study that was done on people that just had medical issues. So I think rheumatoid arthritis and some other type of chronic pain that they were getting ongoing treatment. Well, they divided them up in control group and other group, and the experiment was just simply writing down what they remembered to be one of the most stressful things, painful things in their life. Just writing it down. That's all they did. They wrote it down. The process of writing it had significant impact upon their future treatment. Those that had written down and examined in that process of remembering and looking at it and putting it into writing, they needed less treatment interventions for their pain, for their discomfort, for their medical condition. That's pretty interesting results. And it's what Trauma Bombs, my book that I'm going to be creating, that I have written, trying to find a publisher. That process of cataloging and reinterpreting our life. So many different people who have experienced a wide array of different levels of trauma, different types of trauma bombs, some severe, some not so severe. But every one, even if it's small, as we progress through our life, if the first one is not examined and the negativity of it exercised, removed, put in a manageable context, then the next one, if it comes at the wrong developmental time, if it comes at the wrong sequence, if it's a short period of time that just little bitty normal everyday things happen, there's an accumulative effect, not addition, not a 1 + 1 = 2, but a 1 + 1 = some other number. We can't figure out the math. We're thinking 1 + 1 = 2, or 1 × 2 = 2, or 1 × 3 we may think mathematically about things that happen and discount the impact, but it's actually a multiplication, exponential increase of the impact in our lives. Sometimes the way we relate to other people, you may look at them and say, oh, well, they've had this happen in their life and that happened in their life. When we're looking at a life partner in the dating process, we kind of size up people and say, well, yeah, I can relate to what happened to them, and I understand what happened to them. And we look at the surface. So we're relating to them as though their life events didn't have that multiplication, exponential growth factor of how trauma has impacted lives. So when we respond to them, we're responding to the wrong thing. We're responding to something much less. We're responding to something that we think we understand, but we don't. And that results in many, many broken relationships, divorce, abuse, violence, you name it. The result of that clashing misunderstanding of the trauma accumulated in our lives. Normal, average, everyday people. That causes broken relationships. And the thing is, you can't understand somebody else's trauma. Can't even begin to understand somebody else's trauma history until you understand your own. Until you understand where you're coming from. Understand the perceptions that you have and how your perceptions have been warped by your past trauma. Yeah, there's a lot of factors involved in dealing with even the normal, average, everyday person's trauma. When you're dealing with someone like my son, who has had some significant chronic trauma, we don't even know all of the trauma that he experienced because we don't know his history. He doesn't remember his history, and we don't know his history. We just know that it was pervasive neglect, some physical abuse, maybe some sexual abuse. We don't know. But the process that he will go through, and he says he's begun to start writing down his history. And he's going to have a therapist help him, and I'm going to help him. Just the process of looking at a stage of your life and how you were behaving and what was going on around you, and then trying to identify the feelings related to that behavior. And you can look at it and say, I don't understand maybe why I was doing that, but I know that it was my trauma. And I can put that behind me, and I can choose to respond differently now. I can choose to feel differently about that period in my life. I can choose to recreate the memory and take back the power that those traumatic trauma bombs have stolen from me. Read my blog. Read the blog article, How to Live with Those That We Love That Have Trauma. It's not an easy process, but it's a process that can bring us to a point to where we can come closer together in our relationships instead of being pushed farther apart. And that's many times what trauma bombs do. It pushes us apart. I don't know how many times in my career working in Child Protective Services, I've heard prospective foster parents say, oh, I just know these children, they would be so much better if they just had love and a good home and a safe environment. That's true. They would be better if they were loved, if they have a safe home, if they had a good environment. But all they need part of it, all they need is, no, that's not all that they need. Those good environmental factors is their therapy. It gives them a sense of safety and security. But it's not all they need. They need so much more. And a lot of people who foster children when they first start if they don't understand that these children aren't going to respond to them in the same way that a non-traumatized child would respond. Then they're probably not going to be successful. They're going to be frustrated, and they're going to get angry that this child isn't responding to their love and affection. I've seen it happen. These children aren't thankful for the good environment because many times that good environment is so strange to them that they want to push it away. They want to push the love away because to them sometimes those feelings of love actually hurt. Scary. And that's what happens in many of our relationships. If someone has broken attachment, broken sense of self, trauma bombs that they're having to deal with. Sometimes they push away instead of opening their arms and accepting. In some degree throughout my life, I pushed away. I projected, oh, you don't want to be around me, all the while hoping and wishing and wanting closer relationships, while all the nonverbal messages that I was sending was, stay away from me. I'll reject you before you reject me. Look at your trauma history. Start writing it down. It helps. And as the study showed, just simply writing it down can exercise a part of the power that those past traumatic experiences have over us. So until next time, work on being happy. Start thinking and writing down your history, trying to understand how you've gotten to where you are today. But definitely be safe. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Now, I never thought that it could be so hard to be touched by the light, then left in the dark. That cool compassion my heart once met with, swept away with the tide of a life left breathless on a chord.